Boys, how's it going? It's Herm, and I'm back today with my second team in a series of breaking down every team for next season. And today we're talking about the Sacramento Kings and why they could be surprisingly good next season, and how the Kings are finally doing things the right way. I've been really impressed with their offseason, and I'm going to break down everything about the Kings and what you need to know. But before I do, think about subscribing to the channel. It really helps us grow and continue to reach more people. Well, let's talk about the Sacramento Kings. Last season, the Kings went 30-52 and were completely defined by a trade of young rising star Tyrese Haliburton to the Indiana Pacers in exchange for Domantas Sabonis. The record honestly was very similar before and after the trade, but Kings fans were cringing at the sight of trading the young star in their backcourt and breaking up the backcourt duo of Fox and Haliburton. The Kings want to compete now. The owner has made that sentiment clear, and Haliburton's timeline is likely relatively down the road. So they traded for Domantas Sabonis and made a new star duo with two-time All-Star Domantas Sabonis and likely future All-Star De'Aaron Fox. And the big thing that we need to talk about with it is, although the record didn't really change, one player did, and that is De'Aaron Fox. Before the trade of Tyrese Haliburton, De'Aaron Fox was averaging 21 points per game, 5 assists, 3 rebounds on 46% from the field, an abysmal 25% from 3, and 74% from the free throw line in 43 games with Haliburton on the team this season. After the trade, big green arrow, because this is crazy. His stats exploded after the trade, averaging an efficient 29 points per game, among the best in the entire NBA. 6.8 assists, that rose. 4.1 rebounds went up as well. Pretty much every single statistical category got better for De'Aaron Fox. 50% from the field, 36% from 3, which still isn't amazing, but it's closer to league average. And for a lead guard taking a lot of shots, I can more than live with that. 77% from the free throw line as well. 29 points per game is nothing to scoff at. Those are obviously very gaudy numbers. Only 15 games, but he was dominant during that stretch and is a player that next season we could see take a legitimate all-star leap. And I would love to see that from De'Aaron Fox, because a lot of people view it as him being trapped in a bad franchise, and he would be an all-star in other places, but if he can do it in Sacramento with what they're trying to build there, I think that is the end goal. Secondly, let's talk about Sabonis on the Kings. So after being traded to the Kings in 15 games, just like De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis averaged 18.9 points, 12.3 rebounds, and 5.8 assists. A lot of high pick and roll action with Fox and Sabonis was, kind of the lead point of their offense at that point. But 19 and 12 is phenomenal, was a walking double-double in that span, and raised his assist total, like his assist average, to 6 assists a game. Was really a phenomenal passer as a big man, and if he can be a consistent, really solid passer, I think that opens up so much more for this Kings team. And the dynamic duo of Fox averaging 29 points a game and Sabonis averaging this cool double-double, easy double-double, well over with 2 rebounds over 10 and 19 points per game. I'd love to see him be a 20 and 12 guy instead of 19, but for right now I think we can live with that, especially with how the assists are looking. And then the big news, with the NBA draft, after a 30-52 season, the Kings landed themselves the 4th overall pick. And the big discussion was they should take Jaden Ivey. Jaden Ivey's the 4th best player in this draft class, which is agreed upon by basically everybody. And if you're not going to do that, you should trade the pick. While the Kings said, nah, we're not going to do either of those things. We're going to take Keegan Murray, who most people either had as like the 5th or 6th best player in the draft class. It wasn't a bad pick by any means, but they got a large amount of hate for it because people thought that the only 2 realistic options for them were taking Jaden Ivey or trading the pick for future assets, because Ivey really did have that much value. But they stayed still. They took Keegan Murray, and in the California Classic, his first summer league action, he looked phenomenal. 19.7 points per game, 8 rebounds, 1.3 steals on 51% from the field and 44% from 3, was shooting the lights out in California. I believe they were playing at the Warriors Arena, so it was in San Francisco. 20 points, 8 rebounds, 1 steal. I love to see it. He looked really confident as a cutter, as an off-ball shooter. Everything that we thought about him before the draft was really proven. A guy that's a low-maintenance scorer. He doesn't need the ball in his hands all the time to score, and he showed that throughout his time in San Francisco without, having a ton drawn up for him. It really felt like a lot of the plays were drawn up for Neemias Queta, the guy that was a two-way player for the Kings last season, really big center, physical guy, and some other guys as well. But I don't think they were really necessarily specifically drawing up a ton of action for Keegan Murray. He just knows where to be on the floor. I saw so many times him scoring off of cuts, off of dives to the basket, sitting in the short corner and spacing to the corner to hit threes there. Like, it's not like he's taking all these dribbles. He just does so much smoothly and will be an effortless fit on this Kings team. He was the best fit in the draft, and I think people aren't going to give the pick as much hate as maybe we thought they would. And then on the first day of free agency, they go out and reunite the college backcourt. De'Aaron Fox and Malik Monk played together at Kentucky. I believe Bam Adebayo was there at that time as well, actually. Crazy team. But they reunite the two that were really dominant together in college. And Malik Monk coming off of one of his best NBA seasons. He improved in his last season in Charlotte, took that to the next level in LA, averaging 14 points per game, 3.4 rebounds, and 2.9 assists on 47% from the field, 39 from 3, and 80% from the free throw line. As a guy who watches a lot of Lakers games, there are a lot of times where Malik Monk looked like the Lakers' second best player. Anthony Davis wasn't playing a lot of the time, and Malik Monk was outplaying Russell Westbrook on a relatively consistent basis. That's just what was happening. He was really, kind of relied upon as a scorer for them. They didn't have a ton of scores, and as a shooter because the spacing there wasn't very good. So he comes in, he shoots 39%, even though the defense knows he's going to shoot it. So I think there's a good chance that his percentages actually boost up next season in Sacramento, because the looks are going to be on Fox, Sabonis, Keegan Murray, Harrison Barnes, all the guys there. So they have a lot more options and depth than what he saw in the Lakers last year. There will be more attention away from him, and because of that, he'll get more open looks, and I expect fully Malik Monk to shoot 40% from 3 next season. But 14 points per game, a guy that can be the starting shooting guard. But another guy in that conversation I'm about to talk about was Kevin Huerter, who they traded for from the Atlanta Hawks. All the Kings really had to give up: Justin Holiday, who is an experienced vet but isn't great for the timeline; Mo Harkless, who wasn't getting a ton of burn for them, is kind of just riding the bench there, as well as a first-round pick. In exchange, they get Kevin Huerter, a solid NBA player, 6'7" shooting guard, can play defense, can shoot the hell out of the ball, really solid as a shooter and a defender, comes to the Kings and right away gives them what they need. Next to an explosive guy like De'Aaron Fox, they need shooting and they need defense, and they really address that with both Kevin Huerter and Malik Monk. I think the additions so far for the Kings have been really solid, and for the first time in a long time, I think it looks like the Sacramento Kings are doing things right, doing it the right way, and building a steady foundation that can help them push for the playoffs. But let's look at that after all we've said, after all we've talked about. What are the Kings going to look like next season? I think we're looking at a likely starting lineup of De'Aaron Fox, Kevin Huerter, Harrison Barnes, Keegan Murray, and Domantas Sabonis. I actually put it up as a post on my channel the other day of which guy should start at the 2 for them, and it seemed overwhelmingly people really thought Kevin Huerter. I thought a lot of people would say Malik Monk should start, maybe Davion Mitchell starts at the 2, but a lot of people think Kevin Huerter should start there, and it makes sense because he's such a smooth fit next to De'Aaron Fox. I think that they will work very, very well together, and I think next to Trae Young, some of Huerter's skills were actually kind of redundant. So I think next to a guy like Fox, it'll let him blossom and be more like his true self and how he plays the game. Also have Harrison Barnes, great 3-and-D type guy, quietly had one of the best years of his career last season, especially early on. Keegan Murray looks like he's going to be phenomenal as a cutter, as a floor spacer, probably a guy who can average an easy 15 points for them next year. That wouldn't shock me, and I think he's going to play a very huge impact, and more time to grow together with a duo of Fox and Sabonis should yield even better results. Looking at the reserves, they have Davion Mitchell off the bench, really solid down the stretch last year as well. Really upped his scoring down the stretch. I think he can be a great, scoring punch on top of phenomenal defender off the bench. And there are probably a lot of closing lineups that would call for Davion Mitchell out there with his improved shooting ability and his defense. They call him off night because whoever he's guarding is having an off night. So I really like Davion Mitchell as a defender. Malik Monk as well, great scorer off the bench, provides some spacing. Terrence Davis, who a couple years ago on the Raptors was really solid. Chimezie Metu had somewhat of a breakout year last year for the Sacramento Kings as a rebounder, lob threat, and interior scorer. And Trey Lyles as a floor spacing big man is solid as well. I think the Kings have a legitimate shot to make the play-in tournament next season. There are a lot of teams kind of tanking to get Victor Wembanyama out of France, so there might be less competition than some people might expect. I think the Jazz are probably not going to be all that great. I think the Kings are probably a better team than the Jazz next season without Rudy Gobert. I believe that. I think their defense next year is going to be pretty bad for Utah. I think they're a better team than, teams like the Spurs, the Rockets, the Thunder, teams like that. I think that there's a good chance that the Kings can push for a play-in spot, and that's what they want. They want to be playing past the regular season. They want to be competing for playoff spots, making playoff pushes right now, and I think that they've done a really good job at building the team for that, and I'm excited to see how they look next season. That's going to be it for me today. If you enjoyed the video, think about liking, subscribing, tell me which teams you want to see talked about next. It's been Herm. I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a good rest of your day. Peace.